Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Game of Funds, a podcast about revenues and exits, where Noam and I talk about private equity and everything regarding private equity. Usually we do have revenue leaders on, but this is a very special episode, a little bit different than you guys are used to. And we have a bona fide CEO as our guest who will be talking about the nuances of being a CEO and how does a CEO in private equity view revenue.
Good to see you too.
I tell people like Noam is like a kid in a candy store. Like, so this is like kind of brand new for you. Like, I know your big corporate background in Oracle and you know you work with some of the largest companies as a revenue coach and executive coach, but like this private equity thing, like a completely new beast, right?
True. For me, it's an exciting, theme that we're doing in our podcast. To be honest, I do this because I want to learn, right? Let's be honest with that. But we know we meet so many, executives in private equity. I think that the difference are overwhelming. And I think it's super exciting, David, to have you here today with us. I think you can provide so much clarity, I would say.
Yeah.
And maybe take the clouds a bit away. So David, I'm very excited for you to be here today, and I hope to learn, and I hope that our listeners, viewers will learn from this as well.
Yeah. So today's guest, David Hewitt, CEO of Hyperion Solutions. David, welcome to the show. So happy you're here with us to kind of present a different perspective on the revenue side from the CEO position.
Guys, thanks for having me. I'm also looking forward to learning as well and just having an open conversation around the topic.
Nice. David, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. And then I think that at least for our listeners who already clicked on your LinkedIn profile, they probably saw you haven't been a CEO in private equity, and then kind of what made you dive deep into this beast, I would say.
Move to the dark side.
Move to the dark side, yeah.
I'm loving it so far. So it's the light side as far as I'm concerned at the moment. I would say I wouldn't worry too much that you're deviating from your normal course of interviewing people on the commercial side, because my background is commercial, and obviously even as a CEO, revenues is so critical. So David Hewitt, based in Charlotte, North Carolina, a CEO reporting into a private equity board. I've been in CEO, general manager roles previously. I started my career in the UK. In a commercial role, we were launching a brand new product into the food and pharmaceutical industry. And then my career took me to Asia. I did a startup in China. That was very successful. We grew our install base very quickly, and therefore we needed an aftermarket business to support that install base. And then we started doing local assembly. And before long, I was a general manager running a P&L. Then that responsibility expanded to Asia Pacific. And then my company, an American publicly traded corporation, brought me over to the US. And I did 7 years doing a mixture of turnarounds and step changes. Then I went back to the UK to be close to family in a global CEO role there, again, as part of a publicly traded company. And then I decided it was time to come back to the US. And shortly after getting back to the US, I became a CEO for a private equity, as you say. I really appreciated how transparent the private equity were in the interview process about their interests, like what were their motivations. Very concisely to the point, they're here to make money for their investors and obviously treat their people well along the way. And I just found that transparency about their objectives really refreshing, and that appealed to me. So far, I'm enjoying it.
Nice. So you are 3 or 4 months in, right? So my first question to you is, what is different, right? So what is different when you are a GM or a CEO, either in publicly traded or privately owned company versus private equity? Like, what are the first, I would say, 2 or 3 things you noticed that are completely different than what you are used to?
The fact that there's a finite amount of time, that's the first thing that becomes really apparent. We have 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever the time frame is, and it depends on the private equity and how long they've held the business for. But that's in conversations and that's in your mind very, very frequently. So you're thinking through that lens. And then second thing is, what does a future buyer look like? So when you're making strategic decisions or you're focusing on revenue streams, not only are you looking how does it drive EBITDA, but you're also thinking how does that look as a story to a future buyer. Are these kind of one-time based revenue incomes, or is it sustainable, repeatable? So that's the second thing.
So, Noam, quick explanation for the two things. Number one, David mentioned where is the company, right? So this is something that is called a hold, just for our listeners, this is called a holding period, right? And the goals of the CEO are vastly different if the company is in year 1, year 3, year 5, year 7, year 10, whatever the holding period is, right? Because what happens is CEO will come in, the CEO, like David, he will try to increase the revenue, increase EBITDA, and then make it, let's say, attractive to potential buyers. And that's how private equities make money in the end. Hyperion was bought using leverage, right? So leverage buyout. So he needs to take care of that. Now, the second thing, when David said he's looking out for what the future buyer is, this is something that is called secondaries market, right? So what will happen is the company will be owned by private equity and then be sold off to a second private equity. So secondaries market, right? So he, as a CEO, has a duty both to increase revenue, increase EBITDA, remember, rule of 40. I don't know, David, are you following rule of 40, rule of 45, rule of 50?
We're following the rule of make more EBITDA. That's the rule. We just make more.
the rule of
Just
more.
make more EBITDA. The rule of more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, right? And then he needs to think of the secondaries market. So.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing, listen, it looks like the same challenge or the same topics to look after, but it's actually not, to be honest. The day-to-day seems to be, I don't know if completely different, David, how would you then, how do you treat your time? Basically, how do you treat your time when it means, how you're taking care of this important asset in terms of putting your focus? Again, we're interested here in this is a revenue discussion, but let's broaden the discussion a bit before we narrow it down. How do you treat your time? How do you treat this asset in terms of your focus?
Well, I think there is like a first 100-day answer, and then there's kind of like a post 100-day answer. And the first 100-day answer obviously is about understanding the business, connecting with the people, getting as much market data as you can, deciding where, and then deciding what's the strategy and the growth opportunity for the business, and then mobilizing the organization behind that. Kind of post 100 days, it's like an EBITDA hunt. You're very much looking for EBITDA opportunities, but you're also focusing very much on the next 3 years. It's a very detailed kind of roadmap to achieve your goals. So I don't know how much of this is kind of my evolution as a leader, but I would say more of my time is focused on the future outlook and the future outcome and how we get there, and less than perhaps in other roles where it's on the day-to-day operational execution. So that's probably the slight difference I'm seeing.
Wow. Okay. And if we're going back into, let's say, in revenue, again, we're going to go a little bit more deeper. What does it look like? And by the way, hunting for EBITDA, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah, that would be my comment, right? It's one thing to go after revenue at all costs, which is growth, right? Another thing is, well, if you close like a $1 million or $10 million deal, fine, we increased revenue, but how much of that we actually use to increase our EBITDA, right? So it's you I think as a leader need to kind of think of in those terms as well, which not a lot of leaders think.
Yeah, you may answer your question. It's not growth at all costs. It has to be healthy, high margin, sustainable revenue growth. And so, long-term contracts, high renewal rates, kind of good stickiness. Because again, you're thinking about the future buyer and what they're going to be looking at. And so you're not winning just to win and you're accepting a lower margin. You're not going after growth at all costs. It has to be sticky, sustainable, high margin.
No, have I experienced kind of let's say, the difference between, public and then private equity? Is this the same style or there's more to it, And I'm asking this because I know that our viewers and listeners, they want to know. They want to know exactly what's going on. That's the reason we came up with this line of podcasts.
I think to your point, when you have different types of publicly traded companies at different stages in evolution, it depends, right? It depends on exactly where they are and what their pitch to investors is. Is their pitch to investors that, hold for 10 years and we're going to get you returns in 10 years. And so therefore, we're going to sacrifice margin in the early days, but there's no dividend? Or is it, a case of we're going to not chase an order at any cost and we're going to have sustainable margins and we're going to pay a dividend? So I think it depends on what kind of investor they're trying to attract. I do think in private equity, and you guys probably know more than I do, but in private equity, the demographic that you're appealing to is very different. And therefore, that drives different behaviors within a private equity versus a publicly traded company.
Yeah, my question there to you, David, is how do you then look and assess revenue leadership when you know this is what I need to achieve in my first 100 days, in my year 1, year 2, year 3? These are the exact growth ladders I need to hit. This is the exact EBITDA margin I need to have. So then how do you assess revenue leadership? Obviously, you can't go with cowboys and, charge forward at all costs, right? But we did have an interesting discussion, I think, with Dave Gowen, that he said, as a revenue leader, you need to know numbers. Like, you need to know, read balance sheet, P&Ls, all that.
My view on commercial leadership is that they should be focused on sales leadership, is that focus on sales leadership. Like, I don't need them to know balance sheets. I want them to have an understanding of the P&L and the implications to a P&L. But if you're recruiting a wolf, let the wolf be a wolf, right? Now you got to put guardrails in place to make sure they do act appropriately. So if it's high margin growth, then you put incentive plans and KPIs and approval controls in place that ensures that happens. But your goal of your revenue leader is to delight customers and to capture market share from your competitors and to grow profitable revenues. And I think that's true in publicly traded versus private equity. In terms of the leadership, I look for very similar characteristics. Do they demonstrate extreme ownership? Do they understand, at the very least, their KPIs, their pipeline? Do they have good performance governance that they can drill into the team? Do they lead by example? I think that's, for me, that I would look for the same regardless of private equity versus public.
Listen, Mario, that's like
I did not expect this.
Yes, that's 180 degrees. I love it.
Yeah.
Now I'm confused.
David, just as a note, our very first guest, who was like many, many years a CRO, specifically in private equity-owned companies, he said, and I do tend to agree with him, that he can't keep a head of sales or like a sales leader or sales leaders that don't know finance, that don't know, that don't have like a common language with the CFO, right? So you may know your part of job that you like sales leadership and management and everything you said, but if you can't deal with finance and that part of the business, then you either learn it quickly or get out. So this is why Norm and I are having this reaction, right? Because this is kind of what we've learned and in this journey of exploring PE.
Right. I mean, each to their own.
Yeah, all good.
Of course, obviously, yeah.
I spent 5 years in China, and they had a saying which came from Deng Xiaoping, and it said it doesn't matter if the cat is black or white as long as it gets the milk. And what they were trying to say was, like, ultimately, whatever gets the result. And I think also the answer might depend on what type of leadership team you have and do they balance each other out. And so in my case, is typically I want my head of commercial to be good with numbers. Like, I don't want them to be illiterate. I don't want them to be indifferent to it, because if they are, how can they give me an accurate forecast? How can they sit there and do calculations on discounting, right? So it's not like they should be illiterate to it, but I don't want them knee deep in a balance sheet. I don't want them knee deep in a P&L. I want them driving the commercial team, taking care of customers. And if you put the guardrails in place, their ability to go do something silly is really difficult. And so I think the answer might depend on what type of CEO you have, what's the CEO's talents, what type of CFO you have, how integrated it is the executive team. And then, that might drive what kind of head of commercial that you're looking for. But for me, it's very hard to find an outstanding leader who's strong commercial and is a financial whiz kid. I mean, that's just like, you can find it. They might be the CEO, but you can find it. But like I said, let the wolf be the wolf, right? Let them go do what they do best.
I love it.
This is a completely different perspective.
I love it.
But the perspective that comes from the CEO.
No, this is the reason we're having a conversation with David, right? That's completely different. I think that there's a discussion here different between how revenue leadership sees itself, right? Or sales leadership, let's call it revenue leadership, right? For the sake of the argument. So it could be that the revenue leader is seeing him or herself, right? Very knowledgeable about numbers, finance, accounting, and how does this affect, the P&L and so forth. But the CEO sees it a bit differently. Or maybe the CEO sees it at a lower level of expertise. I don't know. I do tend to, let's say, for my own natural reasons and my own natural, let's say, experience and ability, I am more comfortable with David's comment here and view here.
Of course.
Obviously, because, right? I like this, I like David's, I like you're saying, let the wolf be the wolf, right? So you bring a hunt, you bring an animal, you're right, you bring a warrior, and then you tell him, sit with your Excel right now. He's going to stab you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not, for me, it's easier to digest, David, your comment here rather than anything else. But hey, let's go back, right? I did work with finance, I did work with legal, but it was not natural for me to live inside so many, let's say, dimensions, which are not the dimensions of treating customers, maintaining them, getting agreements long-term, make it sticky, recurring revenue, and so on and so forth. So whatever I had to do, I had to work with experts on finance to explain what's the consequences. But, right?
Norm, I mean, when you and I met, I saw you coach, and like not coach, hard coach, the RevOps person in charge of collecting and assessing revenue on how she should be looking at forecasting, numbers, spreadsheets. And I said, this guy, like, he knows sales, he knows enterprise, but he's so good with numbers and spreadsheets and tables. So that was my first impression. Like,
no, yeah, but you have to take you have to, whatever we did back then, and we met then.
Yeah.
It was hard times, right? But we met then.
Yeah.
So this person that managed this specific company when we met, she was not knowledgeable about that. And here's the gap between a CEO, right, and the revenue leader, and this gap, then created a lot of chaos, right? And we know that. So it was important for this person to know more about forecasting and to know more about what this actually creates when it comes to move this. You need to move the revenue from one side to the other within the company, and it has to work. But there's a basic level rather than, let's say, again, I'm not expert in PE, but I think it's a different level. Now, I'm hearing a very refreshing, note here from David saying, hey, I don't need the wolf to be an accountant, right? Because Ben Affleck is busy. I don't need, right? I don't need the wolf to be an accountant. I need the wolf to be a wolf. And I've put systems in place, I would say maybe, controlling and monitoring, which is the fundamentals of MBA, to ensure that the business conduct internally will actually be good. And then driving sales, revenue people focus would be through compensations and incentives, which is the language which I know.
Yeah, spot on.
Okay.
Yeah, like exactly. If your head of commercial has half of their bonus tied to EBITDA or 25 to cash flow, like they're not gonna be a cowboy about it. But let the CFO explain the P&L to the board. Let the CEO handle that. Like, they need to go out and
they said, okay, wolves will be wolves, and then collectors will be collectors. That's it. But basically, or ops will be ops, revenue ops will be revenue ops. But basically, Mario, I'm with you on that. This is a much more comfortable environment for me. But
yeah,
right, it's a different story we're hearing right now. It's a very refreshing one.
Well, for me, it is really fascinating to see different perspectives, right? Because you and I had now several conversations with leaders in private equity. So we had a CRO, we had a RevOps person. Now we have a phenomenal CEO come in. And then the perspectives are so vastly different, right? Because only the CEO sees the entire picture. Like he has to see everything. His RevOps, P&L, revenue coming in, longevity of the revenue, stickiness, everything. The wolf only cares about his compensation and how he or she will get paid, right? And then as David says, if you put in systems and processes in place, and then you see if he will self-correct or he will need a little bit of a coercion to
leadership, really that And I'm putting the focus on, let's say, not the quality, but let's say the ability, the competencies of this, let's say, leadership style. Is that it's
Is the question, are they different between public and private
yeah,
equity?
yeah.
No, not really, because they're focused on their winning and they're focused on their incentives, right? And if that means that they're going to come to the executive meetings with sharp elbows because we're being stupid and we're not winning customers and we're doing something wrong, I want that. I want that kind of diverse perspective. So I'm okay with that, and I think that's okay in a publicly traded company and a private equity. The truth is, you're rarely going to get somebody who's got to the executive level as a head of the commercial team who can't hold their tongue, right? Who can't when they need to, right? Who can't like self-regulate. Maybe early in their career they couldn't self-regulate because all they wanted to do was win at all costs, but I think they get to a certain point and they can self-regulate. So I don't see a great difference between public and private, other than the type of revenues that you want them to win, maybe. But in the behaviors and the characteristics and the skill sets, no, not really. As long as you put in place the guardrails and the KPIs and the right incentive plan, it doesn't change between the two types, I don't think.
I'm
So
I'm fine.
I'll bring up a discussion that Norm and I, whenever we are brought in a company, to do, either coaching or, executive coaching or whatever Norm and I do, right? And then when we divide people, Norm always takes the senior ones because he always tells me, Mario, can you please deal with these junior people? I can't. Now,
Right,
my
truly.
question to you, David, is there a place for junior people talking revenue and revenue leadership? Is there a place for junior people in private equity owned companies?
55 or 35 or 25, but if they're good, does it really matter? I mean, you get more maturity with age and more experience with age. But is there a role for a young person in private equity? For the right type of person, absolutely. I mean, I don't really see age as a discriminating factor in terms of are you good or not. I mean, I was in my mid-20s and I was a general manager running a P&L. I probably couldn't hold my tongue as much as I should have done, but I was getting results, and so perhaps I'm a bit biased in my answer.
This is good news, Mario.
It is for me.
No, hey man, it's not just about you. Come on. It's more
No,
than
I'm
that.
joking.
I'm joking too.
Well, so just for to be clear, I never meant it as either discriminatory or in any of that sense. I meant it more, right. So I meant it more, is there, because of the timeline, because of the holding period, because of the need to get results and get results fast, is there a time to get in maybe not so skilled but motivated people? Because when you're in a startup and you do have a little bit of runway, it's trial by fire. We'll chuck you in a deep end and burn or die, right? But that's not the thing in private equity, right? That was kind of my line of thinking.
Gotcha. Yeah, look, I mean, if you're going into recruitment and you're thinking, well, this person's got high potential, but they're not ready yet, then I wouldn't hire them, most likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but if they were much younger than you would typically expect of an executive leader, that wouldn't exclude them. But if I thought, hey, I mean, one of my recent leaders at this current company was young by most comparison, was super strong. It is super strong. I think to your underlying question, yeah, for sure. Recently, in fact, there was a role there's a role I'm recruiting for, and I came across a candidate, really high potential, but they're not there today, and I haven't got the time to wait for them. And if it was, so there you go. So yes, it does from that perspective.
We've been approached, Mario and myself, been approached by many individuals that want to go into private equity. And they're asking us, as developers, as coaches, as mentors, whatever our role at that specific company is, what do I need to be? Who I need to be? What do I need to do? And the answer is you need to be damn good. But to be honest, to be honest, let's me be honest. I'm not sure exactly, but up until we met you, David, today, I think I had a good answer. Now I know that I don't. I need to reshape my answer, but I think this conversation.
Can you produce results fairly fast? I think the biggest difference is time, right? Like, sure, you got high potential in a startup. I would take any day of the week, right? Young, hungry,
Yeah.
phenomenal attitude. Yeah, come on. Not so much in private equity.
No, I think you need to be an expert in how to do things in a very, let's say, unstable, sometimes unsteady, unclear for you, right? For you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not be the typical salesperson that sells best to the recruiter, right? So it's about coming in and doing amazingly good in less than 100 days. And I think
Yeah.
that's maybe the focus here. Wow.
Yeah. Yes,
Whoa, David, I think I got everything figured out until you came in today.
I'm sorry to give contrarian advice.
I love it.
Phenomenal.
That's my
Phenomenal.
style.
I love it. I love it. It's great. I
No,
think
no, no.
it's good.
It
It's
was.
great. I think that our listeners gonna be very happy
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. This was really good. David, any advice to a revenue leader, either someone who's been a manager or maybe director or even like a VP level? Any advice if they want to get into private equity? What do they need? What's the mindset? How would you advise someone, or how would you coach someone who's a revenue leader and wanted to kind of get in?
Probably the same advice I would give to anyone in that role, but I think particularly with PE, like, be clear that your definition of success is results, and it's results quickly, right? Like, be under no illusions. Like, all the sprinkles and fairy dust you might hear at some businesses about being well-rounded and things like that. Sure, do things with grace and courtesy, but your job is to deliver results and be okay with that. And it's not for everybody. But again, with my data point, very, very transparent about what they want to achieve and why. There's no fluff to it, and I find that refreshing, and that's a place I can operate in. And so I would share that too.
What's your one big takeaway now? We had a CRO turned coach. We had a RevOps who's doing both RevOps and doing due diligence in M&A process. And then we had a CEO. So what's your takeaway now? You know that you don't know anything?
I think my key takeaway here is that the main difference is you need to be very self-conscious as a let's say as a revenue driving person. Doesn't matter what your role, what your seniority. If you want to go into P, you need to be very, very self-aware and self-conscious. See reality is what is it that you can and can't do. And then you go in, because I think that here is the money time. This is really hard work. And don't go in if you can't, if you can't deliver results.
If you can't handle it.
Literally, this is a killer's job and this is a killer's position. And you need to be one to stand near the next, guys rubbing shoulders with other people. So I find it fascinating. And I think that my key takeaway is that when people now will, ask for my advice, who and what do I need to be? Okay, I can give a better advice. It will start be a winner, a true winner, and know exactly what needs to be done. Yeah. Thanks, David, for today. This is amazingly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.
And for everyone, please make sure to hit like, to hit subscribe, and follow us on our next podcast, where we will dive deep, as we did today, into both private equity and revenue generating. Thank you so much for being a guest.
I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. And until next time, thank you, everyone, and go and sell something.